Hello and welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin, and we're very glad that you're joining us again today. Today we have with us on the show Dan Millman, the author of Everyday Enlightenment, published by Warner Books. He's also very well known for the Peaceful Warrior book,
yes,
right?
Way of the Peaceful Warrior.
Way of the Peaceful Warrior, which took this country by storm, and now it looks like this book is. So we're very glad to have you on the show.
Thank you, Mitch.
It's really a pleasure to have you, Dan.
Nice to be here.
Good, good. So you're in New York briefly. You're doing some talks.
Yes.
You're appearing everywhere.
Yes. 40 cities this year.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Here and abroad.
The book is going well?
So far, so good, yeah.
It's being translated into other languages?
15 so far.
My God, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
Great. What's the main message that you're giving?
Well, the main message I'm giving is a holistic one. I've wanted to share so much. I'm not so much a writer or a speaker as a teacher. And not a teacher in some superior sense, but in the sense that I love to share whatever I've learned.
Yeah.
That's what teachers are.
That's right.
And when I was a gymnast, I found out I enjoyed teaching someone a movement more than learning it myself, because if I learned it, only one person could benefit. But if I could teach it, many people could benefit. And I was exposed, maybe because of my commitment to share things, I was exposed to many interesting teachers over time in my life. And everything I learned, I embodied as much as I could, because if you don't embody it, why bother teaching it, right?
Sure.
And then I wanted to share it. But it was always pieces of the puzzle. Way of the Peaceful Warrior, many people have enjoyed and been inspired by, and then I followed that with Sacred Journey of the Peaceful Warrior. But many people wrote me after that and said, I was inspired by your books, but how do I apply this stuff to daily life? So I wrote No Ordinary Moments, which showed how to, but that still wasn't organized in the same structure. Everyday Enlightenment, for the first time, East or West as far as I've seen, puts together the entire picture of what we could call personal growth or spiritual growth. And it comes out as 12 gateways or arenas of life that every one of us are working on. No human being is exempt from a single gateway. And it was, I asked
That's
myself,
what I found as I was reviewing them.
Yeah.
I saw some gateways that I needed to pass through a bit more elegantly, actually.
Well, all of us.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's working on one or the other.
That's
one
right.
quiets down for a while, then something else comes up in life.
That's right.
But success, for example, many people want to succeed. The fourth gateway is called Manage Your Money, and most people think that's success. If you get your money scene together, you have money, you have a good career, you've succeeded. But people who have succeeded in that way, often they say, but something else is missing. And yes, something else is. 11 more gateways.
Yeah, right.
And so
just that.
Just 11. But it defines really what success is from a holistic or spiritual context, and also what fulfillment is. And I can say, truly, one will find fulfillment once they have not mastered, because it's a constant learning process, but at least resolve many of the issues of the 12 gateways. And I can go into why a little bit later on.
Well, what you did, since you touched upon the one gateway having to do with money, is you've changed and I spend a lot of time doing this too, the definition of what success is. But one definition is money in the bank or material assets.
Right.
But the feeling of accomplishment, of a life well lived, of having lots of love in your life, having a sense of service to the community, and these are real ways of measuring a successful life.
Sure.
And you really bring that point well home.
Yes.
Yeah. Would you?
Well, I can't tell anybody anything that they don't already know on some deeper level. But I try to say it with a certain energy and clarity so it makes sense, and so people can, it's like reminders.
That's actually the strength of the book, Dan.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not so much that we don't know that, but you have organized wisdom from the West and the East in a very coherent, cogent way that I think is very readable and gets the point across.
Thanks.
Yeah.
To play devil's advocate
That's a
for a
compliment.
moment. Yes, I appreciate that. And on the other hand, it's not all simply a rehash of everything everybody's heard of before, because there are a couple of points that I emphasize in the book that is quite different from what people are normally taught in most of the quote-unquote New Age books about developing positive thinking and clearing the mind and quieting the mind and finding ways to feel more happy. We can go into that as well.
I hear what you're saying. You're saying control what you can.
Right.
And what you can really control, I can quote you in saying, is your behavior.
Right. Not so much the mind or emotion.
Not so much the mental aberrations or monkey mind.
Well, yeah, the thoughts that pass through our mind, many people, unless they've really reflected on it, think, oh, I can just snap out of it. I can just stop worrying by saying, stop worrying. And most of us realize thoughts come and thoughts go.
That's right.
But how many people have felt guilty in their lives because they've had quote unquote lustful, erotic, negative, petty, jealous thoughts, and they want those thoughts to go away? It's like, don't think of elephants. You know what happens,
Exactly.
Right?
Especially pink ones.
Exactly. That's just tell somebody, don't think of pink elephants.
Yeah.
So we'll get into that as we go through the different gateways and summarize them.
Why don't you do that, if you would, give the audience the benefit of the 12 gateways, and then we can kind of come back and weave in between.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I want to emphasize first that when I call the book Everyday Enlightenment, let's just deal with the term enlightenment. Many of us think of enlightenment as God realization, unity, total love, total freedom, total bliss, and other absolutes that sound abstract and sound many thousand miles away from us. Maybe somebody else, maybe a mystic, a long-bearded mystic, they achieve what we call enlightenment. Or we know teachers in a certain tradition, Indian or Chinese or Japanese tradition. But I want to bring enlightenment down to earth where we live so we can deal with it in this lifetime, not some idealized future lifetime. So at the end of the book, in the epilogue to Everyday Enlightenment, I give a practice that's pretty radical but realistic. How we can practice enlightenment every single day. In any moment we remember to do the practice. I'm doing it right now. Am I enlightened? Does that mean I'm feeling blissful, or I have no thoughts, or I've reached some permanent state? To me, that is unrealistic. Some people might debate that, and I appreciate debate, because if we agree on everything, only one of us is necessary. That's what I like to remind people. So I love disagreements.
It's not nearly as much fun either, is it?
No. But I will state my truth as I see it. I've been given that torch to carry as a writer and speaker. So, in order to appreciate the practice of everyday enlightenment, though, we need to go through and at least understand the 12 gateways that we're all dealing with in daily life. That's why I call daily life as a spiritual school and planet Earth as a spiritual boot camp of sorts. Because it points out the higher meaning and purpose and connection and promise of daily life. Instead of just, oh, I'm going to work today, I'm doing the usual thing with the kids, every day can be a spiritual practice if we just notice it. And I don't mean just to give fancy language. It becomes more clear as we go through the 12 gateways. So with that, let's take a brief tour through the 12 gateways. I can't begin to give it justice. I explain it further in the book, but let's just touch upon the main points. First, no gateway is any more important than any other. All are equal, except in our own lives, we may meet one gateway on the road or another gateway arises up for us and we confront it. We have issues in that area. So it's different for different people what gateways will stand out for them. But I recommend reading it from the start and going through, because the first gateway, discover your worth, needs to be addressed first. Because if we don't, if we're dealing with self-worth issues, which are largely at the subconscious level, we don't always know we're dealing with them until we really focus and take a conscious look, we don't make very good use of the other gateways. Self-worth is different from self-esteem, first of all. Because self-esteem, many people say, oh, I know about self-esteem, it's important to feel good about yourself, feel self-confident. I agree with that. Many books have been written on that topic. Self-esteem is largely a conscious variable. We know if we feel good about ourselves at any given time. Self-worth goes deeper. It's not so much if we like ourselves, it's a matter of deeper of, how much do I deserve as a human being? Am I a good person? How good? On a scale of 1 to 100. And I ask people to rate themselves based on their past and so on. Where would they really rate themselves on the scale of how good, how valuable am I?
Would, in a sense, you say that self-worth, I understand what you're doing, you're making self-esteem in the category more of a conscious space, whereas this is more unconscious, subconscious, and more deeply embedded, so to speak. Right. Would you say that's more related to a deep sense of self-respect or lack thereof, then?
Good point, because in the book, I mentioned the difference. Self-esteem can be likened to self-confidence, self-worth can be likened to self-respect. Ah. So you're ahead of me, as usual, Mitch. That's great. Yes, so it is a deeper level, but it's trickier because we don't always know. And because it's subconscious, we tend to sabotage ourselves. And it's epidemic, subtle ways. In relationships, it starts getting good, and we call it a fear of intimacy. But when or something good happens to us, and we go, this can't last. There's so many ways, and sometimes it's dramatic. Young celebrities in music field, and acting field, they're adulated, make millions of dollars, they're talented, creative, and they're self-destructive.
That's right.
And we can name many examples if we went into them. Everybody knows.
That's right. Just the same idea that people who win the lottery, like 90 or so percent of them
Are in
are
debt
broke.
after a year.
Right,
Yeah.
after a very short time.
Right.
Because their psychology is all set up still
I don't deserve this. I can't
as it
do
was.
all this. Right.
Yeah.
So that's why self-worth is such a key.
Yeah. It sets the tempo, really, in a sense, for the rest to follow.
Yes. And of course, I have some areas in the book, things people can do to explore and begin to realize their worth. They don't have to raise it, they just have to realize their innate worth. But most of us, it's conditional. It's always conditional. Did I act nice enough today? But at some point, we have to just honor ourselves as human beings, courageous souls who came down to this particular planet to learn.
That's right. So in a sense, also, there's the variable of self-acceptance, that I am the way I am.
Yes.
On some very fundamental level. It doesn't mean that there's not room for improvement.
Yes.
It means just somehow fundamentally.
And not just self-acceptance, but self-love, self-respect.
Yeah.
Not in the narcissistic sense, but giving ourselves the same compassion and joy and value we'd give to somebody else.
That's right.
Many people don't.
That's right.
In fact, I would say when someone has severe financial problems and money just seems scarce, when they have problems with addictions, people who really love themselves don't do that to themselves. And we could go on in life.
That's right. And these are very important points.
One of the key variables. But if people say, come on, Dan, well, that's very nice, but Dan, you're usually pretty practical. How do we get into our self-worth? How do we manifest it? We come to the 12th gateway. There's the answer. So we'll wait for now, okay? Until we come to the 12th gateway.
You'll hold us in suspense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's the key to self-worth.
Yeah. Nor, I think the point should be made, are these particularly linear, although this really does, the first one does set a certain foundation.
Right. It's one to explore
does set
first.
a tone.
Sure. It's not like well, in a sense, we could say when we're children, if we have a high sense of self-worth, it opens up the rest of our life.
That's right.
Ramakrishna said it very well, the Indian saint. He said, if an ocean of abundance can fall on your head, but if you're only holding up a thimble, that's what you're going to get.
Yes.
And that's what many of us hold up. And in that way, we could talk till we're blue about the other 11 gateways. People can read books. They can be talented, attractive, creative, and they can read all the spiritual books, go to the seminars, and wonder why their life isn't improving. They're not letting it. They're still getting in their own way because it's a fundamental self-worth issue.
Because they're only holding up the thimble.
Yeah. The irony is many of us, with the highest vision and highest standards, have the biggest self-worth issues because we never seem to live up to our own standards. It's not just so
it's a very
some
important
of the very
point.
sensitive, very good people.
As they say, Dan, especially as a teacher, we teach what we so often need to learn.
Absolutely. I've had lots of self-worth issues. Something good happens, God, do I deserve this?
Yeah.
Because we look at ourselves, we look at our shadow, we reflect on ourselves. So that's...
And if I may add, there's a level on which the self-worth issue isn't even personal. As you said, it's conditional. And it happens, part of it is just kind of where you happen to be in your life circumstance with your family, with your environment, with your community, and you learn to look at yourself and to life, at life in certain ways.
Right.
Not wrong, not right, just in comparing. And so you find yourself in a milieu of thinking and feeling about yourself. And it's not bad, it just deserves to be upgraded.
Yes. And sometimes it's as simple as having someone we respect and who care about us to show us we're valuable enough.
Yep.
Give us a little time, on the Bill Moyer special on addictions, one woman, her life turned around and she got off alcohol. She went to start going to AA meetings because someone was willing to sit next to her on the bus and show that they knew her. And her tears streaked down her face because she said she was willing to say she knew me and other people were watching. As simple as that. And she finally said, maybe I'm worth it. Maybe I'm not total junk, And we don't realize.
That's everyday enlightenment.
Yeah.
And you can take enlightenment away from the macrocosmos and bring it right down here.
It's
that
not
woman
an
on the
abstraction.
bus. That's right. She had a breakthrough, an inner breakthrough that allowed her to experience greater self-worth.
That moment, that little light went on.
Yeah.
Enlightenment's more like a dimmer
beautiful.
switch being turned up than a light flicked on. It's just
Yeah.
process in life.
Beautiful. So
it brings us into, and I'm not going to necessarily spend the same amount of time on all the gateways, but just to give the heart of it.
Yes, that's right.
The second gateway. Why would it be second? Reclaim your will. Because
something had to be second.
Something had to be. Why is this one? It's like you don't have not a second floor in a building, right? It's got to be there.
That's right.
The reason reclaim your will is second is because the biggest issue, I think, in the personal growth arena is people knowing something and then not doing it. Isn't that the biggest challenge in our life? How many of us know how to eat well? We know we should eat well. How many of us know it's good to exercise every day? How many of us do it every day? That's the biggest issue. We know, we read all the books, we're so sophisticated, right? Yeah. But how many of us do it? So Reclaim Your Will reminds us that we have will. All of us use our will all the time. How many of us take the kids to school whether we feel like it or not that day? Or going to work whether we happen to feel motivated to do so or not? Or do our studies or our homework? Motivation comes and goes. And if we wait for motivation, and many of us are reading and studying how to get motivated, motivation doesn't last because emotions come and go. It's a feeling. Useful if you can get it. And I show ways in the second gateway to generate motivation that really work based on how the subconscious works.
So the book is both a practical workbook in a sense, as well as kind of a simple philosophical walk through these gateways. How to.
In a sense, I've never called myself...
How to.
Yes. I've never called myself a philosopher, but you're right. The why is more philosophy. It's to give people a perspective and understanding, so we know the bigger picture. I call it a map to the territory of human potential.
Yes. It's good.
I'm going to digress for a moment, because many times there are people who are experts in a particular field, and I respect them immensely. People who have meditated for years and really know the territory of meditation, and they can guide other people to meditate. But when someone starts saying, this is the answer, this one thing is the answer, you meditate, you clear your mind, you're enlightened, that's it. I know too many friends who meditate for years, and they're very
the most
until
rigid,
the car breaks down.
Difficult people.
Or the car breaks down, and then it's like they're broke. Oh, what am I going to do with the car? It's very hard to meditate. They got to fix the car. So money is one of the gateways. They're all there. I saw a cartoon.
It's a very good point. It's a very good point.
Well, I don't know if you ever saw the New Yorker cartoon. Showed a doctor standing next to a bed. The patient in the bed was wrapped head to ankles, not to toe, but to the ankles in plaster. Been a bad auto accident. The feet were fine though, and the doctor stood next to him and said, "You know, as a podiatrist, I'd say you're a lucky man," because he was looking at it from that angle. You know, foot doctor, yeah, the feet look great.
Good.
And many of us do that. You know, a meditator, that's the answer. Someone else, it's all about physical fitness. Someone else, it's all about relationships. Specialists are important. Yeah. Somebody needs to talk about the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
So we start to appreciate what daily life is for. A lot of us don't ask the bigger questions. You know, are we alone in the universe? Who am I? And what is life for? That's the philosophical part. That's the bigger picture of everyday enlightenment.
Sure.
It's like a wake-up call in that sense. But the practical part, if we can't do something with it, we have enough to think about already.
That's right.
So I didn't want to write a book just for people to think about. It's what can I do about it now? How can I confront the issues of self-worth, reclaiming our will, and so on.
The will point is well made. It's well made. And there is, something I particularly appreciated in the book, Dan, is the distinction between motivation, which is like a cloud passing in the sky, as are our thoughts. And it comes and it goes, and you don't always have access to it. Right. But your will is the bedrock, and it is there if called upon.
Yes. And it's always there. People need to know they have a will. They haven't lost their will, and it's not weak. Many things mask for weak will. Self-doubt, insecurity, lack of preparation.
Well, you tell a very good story that tells the story in the book about a fellow who was waylaying you on your way to a lecture.
Right.
And he wanted to know about,
how to do everything.
Right, how to do everything.
How do I do that?
Yeah. And you said, well, you already know.
Right.
And they said, well how do you really do it?
Right. And he would go forever trying to figure out how.
Yeah. But you had said to him, well, you just do it. You activate your will to do it. I think he wanted to exercise and eat right and stuff in this case. And you said, well, look, you're activating your will so well now, you're keeping me from getting to my lecture. So will is no problem.
He had no problem with will, not at all. Many people take me to task. They say, Dan, that sounds so simplex, this whole just do it thing.
Simplex.
Like Nancy Reagan, you just say no. Cute, right. Somebody is addicted to cocaine. You're going to say, just stop? Well, this is the irony. Yes. Because whether someone has gone to a treatment, which often I'd recommend, going to a treatment program, NA, AA,
get help,
supportive relatives, interventions, whatever works for them. But whether it takes a day, a week, a year, 10 years, whether they go to a long program, a short program, brief therapy, long therapy, The people who stop end up stopping because they just stop. Whatever takes them to that point, hitting bottom, whatever bottom is for them, whatever takes them to the point where they go, I can't do this anymore and I won't. That's what does it. So it always comes down to that. You have to just do it. And you can postpone it, and you can develop the commitment, to find the perseverance, to find the courage, to develop the motivation, to do this, to do that, or you can just do it.
All the effects, all the bells and whistles of action.
That's why it's realistic.
Yeah.
People will pay a lot of money to go to seminars to tell them, I'll give you magical motivation. I'll make it easy for you. I'll heal you. I'll do it for you. But it comes down to
finally
sometimes
down
you just have
to
to bite the bullet.
Do it.
And it's difficult, and our mind doesn't like it, and our emotions don't like it, and our body may feel painful. But there's a difference between difficult and impossible. When people say, I can't, well, if they say I can't levitate, I'd probably say they're probably right. I've never seen anybody personally levitating, even though we've read about it. If they say I can't walk through a wall, I'd say, well, maybe you can't do that under the spiritual laws as they're constituted right now. But if they say...
Tell them to study quantum physics.
Well, there may be a certain probability. But if someone says, I can't give that talk because I'm afraid of public speaking, that's not a can't. That's, I feel very uncomfortable, therefore I'm choosing not to. It's not a can't.
That's right.
Many times we say can't when we mean I'd rather not, because it makes me feel uncomfortable.
I'm scared.
Well, that's fine. I'm not,
Yeah, I know.
scared. I'm scared a lot.
It's fear.
But how do we, and that's of course the eighth gateway, face your fears.
Yes.
So let's move ahead.
Go right ahead.
We had to get to reclaim your will, because when we talk about energize your body, which is the third gateway, I can talk about principles, really sound principles of diet that people can apply realistically, and exercise. I teach the Peaceful Warrior workout in the third gateway.
Yes.
Taught this. I've done this for 14 years every single day. It can be done in less than 4 minutes a day. It's the best system I've ever seen or devised, frankly, that to release tension, free up the body, open the energy field in less than 4 minutes. I love doing it every morning.
And it is also a physical workout?
Oh, it's a physical workout, yeah. In fact, you might flip through it while we're talking now. Just turn to the third gateway.
I will.
Yeah. Here, I'll flip through it for you. Right here, you can see that it...
See how we activated his will?
Yeah, see, there we are.
Just like that.
Just different, it shows the different exercises.
I see.
And at the end, there's a summary of all of them. So it's a cheat sheet, so people can look at 15 exercises, but it takes less than 4.5 minutes. You flow right through it. It's practical, it's almost excuse-proof. How many people don't have 3.5 minutes to exercise? I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
right.
again, it's practical. So exercise,
Wonderful.
more important than diet. Diet, breathing, relaxation, alignment, and gravity. I go into the major variables. But again, doesn't do much good unless we've reclaimed some degree of will to do it. Because we can say, oh, good, I know about this, and I know about that, and I know about that. That's why. But I've tried to make it simple so we can apply it. One of the principles I work with in my own life, peaceful, people say, oh, peaceful warrior, that sounds like a Spartan Marine type discipline. Not at all. Because how many people could I assist in that way? But I try to, simple is powerful. I try to keep things simple and accessible because we're more likely to do it.
And less is more.
A little bit of something's better than a lot of nothing, right?
That's right.
So I recommend people start with something simple that doesn't take long, instead of saying, I'm going to go to the gym from now on for 1.5 hours a day. Because it doesn't usually last. We go in, we hurt, we overdid it, and then we're off. So energizing the body has practical principles that we can really access and do in daily life. We don't have to set aside more time. Because daily life we have 24 hours.
That's right.
No more than that.
That's right.
So it's how to integrate it into our daily life, not do something special and make time for something extra. So what can we do during our daily life? So then we move right into the fourth gateway. And many people go, manage your money. What does it have to do with enlightenment, Dan? Because we have so many thought forms and beliefs.
What does it have to do with spirituality?
Exactly. It's the opposite. There's either material or spiritual. And we have so many of us.
The sacred and the mundane.
Exactly. And the profane. We have pictures of spiritual people, renunciates, sannyasins, ascetics, who are yogis, sadhus. They've given up everything, just live it with a loincloth.
Except for the loincloth, right?
Exactly. And we see the begging bowls and so on, and we say, these are spiritual people. Then we see millionaires, we go, oh, they're not spiritual. And the biblical quotations, the rich man in the eye of the needle, entering heaven, and the root of all evil, and it goes on.
Which I've been told, by the way, is a complete misunderstanding
Well, they are.
of the meaning and mistranslation.
It's the love of money, prioritizing money. For example, an athlete who competes rather than beautiful performance, who competes because they want this trophy to take home, they're missing the point. Someone who works just to take the money home needs to look at their work again and take a look at how they're really providing a service. So that's what it's doing, things just for money. They are missing the point, and that is
exactly. So in a sense, what you're saying is, Dan, if people look at just the goal and not the means of arrival, so to speak, they're missing out on most of the game.
Yes. I often ask people, if you had all the money in the world, what would you do? And I say, good, make a living at that. Yeah. Whatever it was you do, find a way to make a living.
That's right. Oh, that's very sound, wise advice.
So with a money issue,
why wait?
Exactly. Why wait? Why wait?
For what?
So that's money issues. It doesn't do any good to give people tips on money or stockbroking advice or how to balance checkbooks and practical things while their either self-worth is low and they're sabotaging their money, or while they have all these beliefs. And
not
like
deserving, not entitled, money's bad.
I was in San Rafael one day, about 15 years ago, and I stepped out of my front door and I saw across the street two young ladies, they were in their teens, getting out of a $70,000 Mercedes sports car. And a kind of a negative cloud passed over me. If I could have given it words, it would have been, look at those little rich girls. But in that moment, I had a moment of self-reflection. And I said, wait a minute, I don't even know those young girls. They might be very nice young ladies. But because they appeared to have a lot of money, just because of that one thing, I felt negatively about them. And I realized in that moment, if that's how I felt about money, I certainly wasn't going to attract any. And at that point in my life, I was mastering my poverty consciousness stage of life. I was working 2 jobs, $7 an hour, struggling, going deeper in debt. And that's when the turnaround started. I said, wait a minute. What is it about money? Is it bad? I said, no. But I've always believed that. I grew up with some issues with money. So that's what. So manage your money.
As we all did. As
many of us have. Or on the other hand, some people,
Most.
it's their religion. It tends to be either our God or our devil. And so managing our money is not about having to get wealthy in order to be spiritual. No. But it's not about getting poor to be spiritual. It doesn't make us spiritual. It just makes us poor.
It's about having a healthy attitude toward all the elements of your life.
Pleasure, abundance, money, sharing, energy. Money is energy.
It's energy.
Yeah. Some people are wealthy, but they have guilt about money, so they still have, their attention is still trapped.
Well, they're suffering. They're suffering, and rather than, in other words, to take what you're saying to its nth degree is almost to say, you can be liberated through having money, depending on what your relationship is to it.
Yes.
It's like being liberated by having and through having a body. Exactly. I mean, there are, in the same way as you're saying about not having money, the poverty consciousness of the classical ideas of the yogi.
Yes.
In the same way, it's even having a body is thought is scorned.
Right.
So that too is deprecated rather than upheld as a magnificent gift from creation. Talking about creation, I think we might have to create another TV show because we can't get to another 7 or 8 gateways in 1 minute.
I don't think we can.
Can you stay by? And
let me summarize. For now, let me summarize. What the higher purpose of these gateways is not about just to go through them and achieve something. Some people will listen to it like, oh, a new thing to achieve. It's about freeing our attention. There's a saying that there's God, then there's not paying attention.
That's right. That's
right. When we've reached sufficiency and stability in the money area, when we've dealt with the various gateways, our attention is free then to rise up into our heart, literally up through the body. Then we begin to experience unconditional love and live it, and live its service, which is the 12th gateway. Serve your world. Our heart starts to awaken naturally. The so-called mystical states start to occur naturally because our attention is free. That's why we need to address these issues in all of the gateways.
Beautiful. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Pleasure to be here.
I think we need to look at our watches and see if we can do this, continue to do this more thoroughly, because you did a beautiful job in presenting it. And I appreciate it. I think the audience does.
I hope so.
So thanks so much for joining us. You've been listening to Dan Millman, who is the author of this wonderful book, which I'm going to try to show you right now, Everyday Enlightenment, published by Warner Books, and is on a tour of 40 cities across the country right now. And check your store out and check into this book. I think you'll find it very worthwhile. Thanks so much for joining us. This is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World. Give me a call at 212-420-0800. Love hearing from you, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.